I'm Shannon Martin. Tonight, thousands of education workers again taking to the streets to make their voices heard.
All unions have to stand up against this. It's got to stop.
The fight over the walkout by CUPE education workers in Ontario continues. A Labour Relations Board hearing is into its second day. Plus,
none of those recommendations advocated for shortening the green belt or getting rid of environment protection.
Reaction to Doug Ford's latest plan to remove land from the green belt for development. And time to roll back the clocks tonight. We'll have some tips on how to adjust.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Hello, thanks for joining us. For the second day, tens of thousands of Ontario education workers are making their voices heard. At the same time, the Ontario Labour Board is meeting looking into the fight between the province and CUPE. Ethel Musa begins our coverage looking at the kids' programs that are already impacted.
At this basketball practice in Mississauga, Ontario, kids are preparing for an upcoming game. But their coach says there's a real possibility ones in the near future will be canceled.
This weekend alone, we had to cancel program for about 700 students and student athletes, so they weren't able to play this weekend.
55,000 education workers in Ontario walked off the job on Friday, forcing some schools to close their doors to in-person classes and extracurricular activities, like this basketball program that uses their facilities.
We're hoping that, they're able to resolve this pretty quick and we can get the kids active again.
On Thursday, the government passed Bill 28. It imposes a 4-year contract on education workers, and it takes away their right to strike. Despite that, thousands of workers took to the streets, and they returned again today. Just a few blocks away from this protest in downtown Toronto, the Ontario Labour Relations Board is conducting a hearing. The province filed an application alleging CUPE, the union representing education workers, is engaging in an unlawful strike, while the union claims its job action is a legitimate political protest. Some legal experts say it's a dispute that could have repercussions for other unions.
Generally speaking, the government's action in passing legislation, imposing a collective agreement, prohibiting strikes, and invoking the notwithstanding clause is impactful not just on CUPE, but on the other public sector unions who, in the years ahead, will begin bargaining with the government.
Many parents in Ontario are now preparing for remote learning again.
We'll do our best. That's what we do. That's what we can do. But, it's not good for the kids. The kids have been out of school for 2 years, then they're out of school again. It's really not good for the kids.
The Ontario government's new law has set fines for violating the ban on strikes, but CUPE says it will fight them or pay them if it has to. Ethel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, leaders from Ontario's other education unions expressing concern tonight over the use of the notwithstanding clause and the effect it could have on their contract negotiations.
What the government did this week was really quite shocking. They didn't just say you can't go on strike. They didn't just say, here's your collective agreement, but they said, we're also going to use the notwithstanding clause. We're going to attack your rights and freedoms. This legislation really is looming overhead, and I believe it's threatening our ability to bargain freely.
Littlewood says her union, representing secondary school teachers and other education workers, has made some progress in talks with the government. 20,000 of their members are in the same job class as the protesting CUPE members. She says they have 3 bargaining dates scheduled next week. The other 3 non-striking unions are also negotiating new contracts after they expired on August 31st. Many parents feeling the pressure this weekend, unsure what next week will bring. If schools remain closed, many will be scrambling with what to do with the kids. As Tyler Cheese shows us, the province has now issued instructions to daycare providers on what kind of programming they're allowed to offer if the job action continues.
With the strike ongoing, many parents are trying to sort out childcare for the week ahead, but daycares like this one behind me won't be able to help with that. That's according to an email from the Ministry of Education that says, quote, Due to CUPE's actions, before and after school programs serving kindergarten and school-age students are not permitted to operate full-day programs on instructional days. Today I spoke with daycare operators and parents about this latest development.
There's been lots of mixed messaging coming from the TDSB and the Ministry of Education in the last few days. It's been the Ford government and Minister Lecce have basically put childcare centers, like they did during COVID, in a very precarious situation. This pits us against the unions. It pits us against families and parents because we do want to provide service to families.
You're telling me that I can't send them to daycare. Daycare can't provide for them. That means I have to now find a childcare place that's unlicensed and pay a heck of a lot more. And even during the strike, for like all my kids, for someone to watch them because they can't be on their own.
In the past, we have provided care during teacher strikes. In the past, we have provided care. And also during COVID, during the shutdown, we participated in emergency childcare, and we provided online learning. What is different this time? Because we have all the resources.
For younger children, the province has left it up to individual childcare centers to determine whether or not they'll stay open. But for those in or around schools, they may have no choice. Speaking with operators, they're mostly concerned about the impacts this situation is having on children and the families they work with. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Coming up shortly, we'll hear from Education Minister Stephen Lecce and Laura Walton, the president of CUPE's Ontario School Board Council of Unions. They've both just given interviews with CBC. Our team is working on them now. We should have them ready for you in less than 10 minutes. Well, to another labor dispute we're watching closely this weekend. Talks continue between Metrolinx and the union representing GO Transit bus drivers. But if a deal cannot be reached, bus drivers say they'll strike on Monday. Today, Metrolinx tweeting they remain optimistic they'll reach an agreement. The union represents more than 2,000 workers. It says talks began in April and members have been working without a contract since June 1st. It is a move catching many people by surprise after saying it would not develop the Greenbelt tonight, a reversal from the provincial government. Ontario's housing minister says it's necessary considering the province's housing crunch. Meg Roberts has more from the government and reaction.
Unequivocally, we won't touch the Greenbelt. Unlike other governments that don't listen to people, I've heard it loud and clear. People don't want me touching the Greenbelt.
Premier Doug Ford is proposing to touch the Greenbelt, a contradiction to a promise he made in 2018. Now he wants to build 50,000 new homes on 7,400 acres in 15 different areas.
We'll figure out how to clean up this housing mess and this housing crisis that we're facing in a different fashion.
Environmentalists say the move could have serious implications. With fewer trees, cities get hotter, adding to heat island effects, and green spaces are necessary to absorb rain.
Reversals in this under the Ford administration are no surprise, right? But this city and cities in general desperately need more, not less, green space.
The Greenbelt Foundation, an organization dedicated to ensuring the land's protection, responding to the news with this statement. As we work to understand the impacts of yesterday's proposed changes to the Greenbelt, we will be working with government and key partners to protect and sustain these critical areas and systems. Other political parties sharing their thoughts on Ford's announcement. The NDP saying it's disturbing that Doug Ford is taking another run at punching holes in the Greenbelt. This is about making the rich richer. The move is receiving criticism from housing advocates who say creating more homes can be done at less of a cost without expanding into the Greenbelt.
Highways are not cheap. Transit expansion out deep into the suburbs is not cheap. Building utilities and serving these neighborhoods is also not going to be cheap. The further away you go, the most fiscally prudent thing to do would be to build more housing in existing neighborhoods.
The Ontario government will be launching a 30-day consultation. If that proceeds, construction to Greenbelt areas like this one could begin no later than 2025. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, the province has said it would add more than 9,000 acres to the Greenbelt Elsewhere, well, we have an update to a story we first brought you yesterday. A 23-year-old is facing charges after a deadly stabbing in Pickering. Police were called to the area of Rosebank Road in Shepherd around 7 last night. Durham police say a 56-year-old man was stabbed multiple times. He was rushed to hospital in Toronto, where he died. Police say Sijan Suleiman Kail was arrested last night and charged with second-degree murder. For the 8th straight week, Iranian Canadians continue protesting in solidarity with those back home in Iran. 2 rallies taking place in downtown Toronto today. Clara Pasica takes us to one of them.
Hundreds of Iranian Canadians and supporters gathered at Queen's Park today to stand in solidarity with people in Iran. Last week, Iran's Revolutionary Guard started cracking down on protests within the country, threatening to come after people who have taken to the streets for weeks, motivating members of the community to keep showing up here in Canada.
They had a memorial service in Iran. They were shot at. They were hit just because of a memorial service. The thing that we don't even think it would be dangerous. So, yeah, I'm not gonna get tired. No matter what, my life is on pause. I'm gonna fight for my people.
The ongoing protests were sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini in September. The 22-year-old woman was detained by the morality police in Tehran for allegedly wearing her mandatory headscarf too loosely earlier this fall. Reza Lohr, who organized this week's protest, says he's thinking of his sisters left behind in Iran who he cannot return to see.
Right now I want to cry, to be honest, when I'm thinking about them. And I know they did some brave action and put their life in danger. But I'm proud to them.
The cost to protesters in Iran has already been great, with at least 450 dead and tens of thousands arrested by security forces. Mata Bankutsui, who left Iran with her family out of concerns for her safety after being involved in protests, says it's more important than ever to show solidarity.
We just want to make sure that they know they are not alone. If the government and this Islamic regime just doing lots of things with them, like bad things, torturing and killing them, it doesn't mean that they stuck there. No, we are here to just show that they are not alone.
Clara Pasica, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, a rally at Nathan Phillips Square calling attention to a persecuted minority group in Iran.
Without the representation and the participation and information about these nationalities, the world will be having a one-sided view of what's happening in Iran.
The Baluch are in the southeast area of the country. Today, the community in Canada supporting the nationwide protests and bringing attention to what they've labeled the Bloody Friday massacre that happened on September 30th, where at least 93 people were killed. Organizers say it is an example of the oppression that's been happening in their community for many years. Here's a live look at Toronto's skyline this hour. A special weather statement in effect for the city as well as other parts of Ontario due to some strong winds expected this evening. Sophia is here to break it all down for us.
Yeah, you could be out in shorts and t-shirt in those gusty winds,
true.
Decorating for Christmas, but you might want to hold off because these winds could be gusting in excess of 70 kilometers an hour. It's record-breaking temperatures, though, that will give way to these potentially damaging winds. Shannon, special weather statement out for actually much of the province of Ontario, where winds could actually exceed 80 kilometers an hour, especially along the Georgian and the Huron shores. We're already seeing winds of upwards of 70 kilometers an hour. It's this cold front that will continue to mix down to the surface and head up towards the 401, up towards eastern Ontario into the overnight period, bringing those really strong gusts and locally some power outages as well. But it's mostly a moisture-starved cold front. Any of the heavy rain will really be up to northern Ontario, north of Sudbury. Everybody else in the south is seeing just scattered showers, and we're still in this warm, drought-like regime. How warm, you ask? Well, we hit 25.1 today. Feeling like 28. It's the warmest we've been on a November day ever in history in the city of Toronto, beating out the previous record of 25.0 set in 1950 and in 1961. And in fact, some communities in the Niagara region were just a degree short, Shannon, of the all-time Canadian temperature record for November. So incredible warmth. Yes, the shorts and t-shirt. Yes, you could be decorating for Christmas, but you might want to wait. We have turned back the calendar with July-like temperatures, but coming up, I'll tell you about how we turn back the clock and how you can weather some of those issues into the overnight period.
Thanks, Sophia. Now I feel guilty about sitting inside and working all day. My
With
goodness.
that sunshine outside, it's not going away anytime soon, though. There's the teaser.
Okay, good.
Tomorrow.
Yes, and we're talking daylight savings time with you in a little bit. We'll be right back. Okay, we're returning to our top story now. Ontario education workers and their supporters out in full force today. Last hour, CBC's Travis Danraj spoke with Ontario Education Minister Stephen Lecce. Now, he asked the minister if the use of the notwithstanding clause was suspending basic rights and freedoms.
Sunday, the union decided to strike before they even knew of legislation that included that provision of the Constitution. Their intention all along was to strike and impose hardship on children. That happened just 3 years ago. We are standing up for their right to learn, to be in school, for parents to go to work, and to have some normalcy after the most extraordinary impact on human history on kids. It is the responsible act to use every tool available to government because we know the impacts of the pandemic on children. It's why we brought forth legislation on Monday, after the union decided to proceed with the strike. I just want to be very clear. The intention all along of the union, going back to the summer, where they announced a strike mandate before the government even brought forth our first proposal. This is what they wanted to do, and we gave them an off-ramp. We urged them, let's work on a voluntary deal, right up until the hour before the bill passed. They wouldn't take a strike off the table. The government was forced to move forth legislation. And now, of course, we're going to use the tools to enforce that law.
Minister, forced to move forward with the legislation. But the question is, which I saw you were asked this a couple of times in news conferences, and you didn't answer specifically, so I'm hoping to get a specific answer from you. When did the government begin discussing using the notwithstanding clause? When did you start drafting the legislation? Because legislation, as you know, does not happen overnight.
Yeah, the only time that this was really discussed was once the union put the province on a 17-day strike notice. As you know, and for some watching, the requirement of the union to give a 17-day no board report, then it could be either an additional 5 days or within those 17 days that the union could invoke their 5-day requirement to strike, which is what they did on Sunday.
So you started drafting, to confirm, you started drafting the legislation when?
We started looking at options after that 17-day option began. The government then started to look at what options do we have should, God forbid, the union proceed with the strike, because frankly, we don't have, as you know, we don't have tolerance for disruption. We made it very clear in the summer through the plan to catch up, kids have to stay in school.
So for her reaction to Minister Lecce's interview, CBC also spoke to Laura Walton. She's the president of CUPE's Ontario School Board Council of Unions. She's also an educational assistant.
Laura, thank you for joining us. I know you were listening in to the Minister of Education there. What stood out to you?
Well, what stood out for me is just how disconnected this minister is from how labor negotiations happen, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. The fact that they were working on this legislation before any strike notice was provided should tell the people of Ontario all you need to know. They had no intent to ever bargain in good faith. As a matter of fact, coming to a table and saying, if you do not remove your right to strike, then we're not going to be bargaining, is really the definition of bad faith bargaining. So I have huge concerns when I hear that. My heart just sinks because we should be always going into this with open minds, open hearts, and using our ears. And yet, here they have a team that was working harder on legislation than they were on negotiations.
We have much more on this story on our website. Our team has been working on it. And if you want to watch the full interviews there with Education Minister and Laura Walton, you can head to our website, cbcnews.ca. We have more ahead. We're back in 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. You may know Mark Eversley is the GM of the NBA's Chicago Bulls. He was born and raised in Brampton, a place where his name will now be forever etched.
For the kids at the Brampton Youth Basketball Club, for you, I would say, dream big. I dreamt big, and I've gotten to this stage in my life because of the values that my father instilled in me. I was born in London, raised in Toronto. Really became a man through this unbelievable city right here.
The City of Brampton unveiling the Mark Eversley multi-use court at Bruce Beer Park. Eversley was named the general manager of the Bulls in May 2020. He's the first Black GM for the franchise. He previously worked for the Raptors, Wizards, and 76ers and was selected to the board of directors for Canada Basketball. Sophia is coming in with the wind and the tips. We need the tips for daylight saving time. Yes.
But hey, we get that coveted extra hour of sleep into the overnight period, but is it really? Yes, we fall back, Shannon. 2 a.m. local time. You'll wake up to your phone automatically updating and a little bit of time travel having happened while you slept. But while we will get that extra hour of sleep on paper, we also might experience some other unwanted outcomes, like the potential of a higher chance of things like depression and more seasonal affective disorder from that lack of daytime sunshine. Also, we get vitamin D from our skin. Less sunlight hours during the day could mean that lack of vitamin D for overall health. Our sleep might actually be hindered, as many of us might wake up more frequently or earlier. November is also known as the worst month for pedestrian collisions. So pedestrians, make sure if you're out walking and out and about, wear reflective clothing on your person and have lighting on your bikes or on yourself. Stay more vigilant, have that head on a swivel. And for drivers, you want to really be reminded to drive according to the reduced visibility and the changing fall weather, especially during those evening 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. hours when you're really going to notice cooking dinner in the dark and driving home in the dark, but you won't have fall-like weather for the next, 36 to 48 hours. We are still basking in what was the warmest day in November history. How good does that sound on the ears? We felt like 28, and it wasn't just in Toronto. It was all the way around the Golden Horseshoe and for much of Southern Ontario that we're dealing with these record-breaking temperatures. Sunday morning, you will have a little bit of fog, but the heat continues. You're in the high to mid-teens. Sunday afternoon, plenty of sunshine on deck as well. And into the overnight period, we're at where we should normally be for our daytime high. We lose, though, about 5 degrees every day for the next couple days until we fall back down to earth and back down to seasonal for Tuesday and Wednesday. But still a really great week ahead, Shannon. And my question is, who's going to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch the time travel happen on your phone and watch all the clocks automatically switch?
Yeah,
maybe
no,
not me. But.
I'm thinking the kids are going to be up early. That's the thing, you know?
Yeah, we won't really get the extra hour of sleep. I should have added for mothers, just doesn't really count.
That's true, but hey, we like breaking records.
Hey.
What one to break? Yeah,
and what
fabulous.
a one to break.
Yes.
It's been, 40, 50, 60 years since we've done it, so pretty
amazing.
Good.
Well, we're going to say goodbye to everyone tonight, but before we go, we got to take you to another fall tradition and show you some friendly faces from the Royal Agriculture Winter Fair, the event back on this weekend after 2 years away due to the pandemic. We'll see you again tomorrow night.